Hey there, welcome to the DFS Build NBA edition. I'm Kevin Roberts, joined with Taylor Smith, getting ready to go over this nice main slate over at DraftKings. The goal, as always, is to help you win, and hopefully we can do that with this free video of a slate breakdown. Also, you can get extra help in our free Discord. Come in and join everybody else. The community is really good and engaging, super helpful. You can share your lineup. You get updated core plays from us, which are also currently free. If you want extra advice with something like FanDuel, if you also play there, by the way, this video is specific to DraftKings for the most part, but we do hand out FanDuel core plays. You can hit up our Patreon, which can be found at the bottom of this video, and you can catch our FanDuel core plays as well. We also are putting out packages on Patreon for DraftKings Night Slate and MMA DFS going forward. So try to take advantage of all that. They are all on 7-day free trials, so you can hop in, see what we're all about, and then hopefully you stick around. Right now, though, we're going to break down the slate, hopefully point you in the right direction. It is an ugly slate, no doubt about it. There are some massive spreads, a lot of gross value in horrible spots, but we're going to break. We're going to break it down position by position, starting at point guard. We got a lot of interesting guys up top. 3 guys coming in with a projection over 50, 4 at 49 plus. So why don't you just tell us, Taylor, which of those studs at point guard do you like the most?
I definitely like. Well, I'm like splitting between Cade and Trey. I think they're both awesome. I think Trey's matchup against San Antonio is or Trey's actually facing Milwaukee. Trey's matchup against Milwaukee is awesome. Milwaukee, not a good defense, particularly since they swapped Drew Holiday for Lillard, of course. Trey's been pretty motivated since he got snubbed from the All-Star team. They're shorthanded. They traded DeAndre Hunter and Bogdan Bogdanovic yesterday, still without Jalen Johnson. So I think he's an awesome play, under 10K. I love him quite a bit tonight. Cade is $900 more on DraftKings, but still popping a lot. Detroit's matchup against Philly is not great with Embiid likely to play, I think, but Cade's just so good, stuffing the stat sheet, playing huge minutes every night. Just the role is monstrous. So those are the that are my favorite at the quite a bit. I think LaMelo's playable if he's in and we hear something specific about minutes in a fast-paced spot against San Antonio, but not a priority just because we don't know about the minutes. There's a lot else on the high end that's okay. Like Dame's fine, Fox is fine. We saw a huge debut out of him the other night, but Trey and Cade are easily my favorite among the like super expensive ones.
Yeah, I'm okay with Cade. I think if you want to just play the ownership game with LaMelo, if he's not too limited, that's fine too. I think SGA, and I'm with you on Trey. SGA and Trey are the most interesting guys of this lot up here. Obviously, they're all in play. They're all projecting really well. They're all kind of the same price, except for Trey's way cheaper. But Trey, to me, is the best one. Not going to be owned whatsoever right now. I really hope Cade plays. For one, so I don't get sucked into assy Pistons value, but also because
it's not any worse than the other value. We're talking
you're
about
right.
Wizards and the Raptors tonight, so
no, you're right.
Gross all the way around.
I know, but I'm just saying. Also, because then Trey's ownership would spike. So I like that Trey is getting overlooked. Not sure why, but I like that a lot. Obviously, you have Maxey there too. Trey just projects better. He projects, favorably compared to the other guys who are more expensive than him and also getting more ownership. So to me, it's just, I'm not going to steal your flag plant here, but I bet you that's going to be your guy because he was going to be mine. But I like that we're aligned here. But Trey looks awesome. I hear you on Fox. Good price. Monster usage in his first game, his debut with the Spurs. He would look fantastic. Not the most amazing projection here. Same with Donovan Mitchell. I think obviously Dame would be a priority if Giannis does sit 8.7K with a nice projection right now against the Hawks. That's a good matchup going up against Trae Young, although he might get the Dyson Daniels treatment. I don't know. But either way,
sure
he would look good. Yeah, of course. But he would look good without Giannis anyways. Heroes projection doesn't blow you away, probably partially because Brooklyn plays slow as shit. But Miami kind of plays faster now that Jimmy isn't there. So they could maybe, influence that a little bit. So I think Hero is probably the next guy beyond Trey and SGA and Dame, assuming Giannis is out, that I would really gravitate towards. But just real quick one on SGA. So obviously that he's expensive. He's the most expensive point guard on the slate. But he's not really that owned for a guy that's been like dropping 50-point games like it's nothing. I know Chet's back, but Chet's can be limited. And SGA has been doing this regardless of who's in the lineup. Warranted his usage could come down a bit. and they're facing the Raptors where they're like 15-point favorites or something gross. 19? Good Lord. Okay. So that is dicey. No doubt about it. I do think, though, that the Raptors game, if you had to pick one between the Raptors and Thunder and the Cavs and Wizards, like which one's more likely to not be a complete housing, I think the Toronto one might be. But just SJ also can get there in 3/4 anyways. I just think if he's not going to be owned, that's a little bit interesting for sure. All right, so let's kick it down to the value. Not a lot to love, especially in like the lower mid range. But is there anybody that you're seeing that you like?
Jordan Poole again without Kuz. Brogdon might be out. Washington made a couple of trades, so they may not have a full complement anyway. I understand he's Jordan Poole and it's Cleveland and he's frustrating and there are a lot of ways that can go wrong, but he's Jordan Poole. He's going to have all the usage. It's just a matter of whether he makes the shots. I think he's playable again at 6'8". He's actually the point guard to which I have the most exposure right now, which is really fucking horrible feeling, but I think it's okay just because of the price. I think otherwise, and I do like Dyson Daniels. Like you kind of mentioned him as the likely defender on Dame, but they also made trades, like we said, Hunter and Bogdanovic out. They also have injuries and stuff. He's played huge minutes lately. He's 7,200, a bit more expensive, I think, on FanDuel, but the blocks and steals upside's monstrous with him. He's going to have to play a full complement of minutes, I would think. Super high total game. I think it caters to his skills pretty well. So even at like a max price for him, I think he's a really good mid-range tournament play. And then otherwise, we're kind of going cheaper. I mean, Donovan Mitchell's okay, but I'm worried about the blowout. Cleveland likes to manage minutes with their main guys anyway. I think if you want to save money, Ty Jerome's going to be awesome. Bub Carrington again at 3-3. Played huge minutes in the last game. Brogdon is questionable. Got a midday downgrade. Carrington does feel a bit chasey considering how much red you saw in that screenshot of his game logs. But like we said, the Wizards just play their guys minutes. I don't think a blowout's going to hurt him, even as the starting point guard. So perfectly fine with him, even as chalk. Probably better at shooting guard. And then I do think Keon Johnson's still a strong play. Ben Simmons is out. Cam Thomas, of course. Noah Clowney's out. He's been getting pretty consistent burn. And at 5K flat against a Miami team that's not quite as stingy as they were during the Jimmy era, I'm fine with that at 5K.
Yeah, on any other slate in any other spot, Jordan Poole would look awesome. The other day, it was like a very similar situation. I think he's like $300 cheaper. Projection was about the same, and he was core play, and he ended up getting 36 fantasy points, even though they oddly enough won in a blowout and winning their third straight game, which is wild. Doubt they're going to do that here. Doubt the game's going to be close, so it's very tough for me to get to Poole comfortably. I will say one thing that we were saying before we went, live here, so to speak. Sometimes these blowout games just don't blow out. The Cavs, Celtics, like these big teams, sometimes they play down to the level of competition. So is it that crazy to think Poole comes out? Like, by the way, if the Wizards are going to keep it close, how do you think they're going to do that? It's with Poole going off, probably, right? So if Poole comes out here and drops 40 points or something crazy, then that game's probably going to stay close, and he's definitely going to more than get there. He's going to completely exceed. So I like the Poole call. It certainly doesn't feel good, especially playing into a little bit of ownership. He's like 16% owned right now. But as far as like price and projection and usage goes, like you can't really ask for a better DFS play. Like he looks really good in those cases. I don't mind the other guys you said. Ty Jerome looks like really good value if you want to play into the blowout. Even if it doesn't blow out, he's going to get 25, 28 minutes off the bench.
Yeah, they traded LeVert, so like he kind of has to have a pretty good role either way.
Yep. So I think he's safe anyways. I don't think he's necessarily a core play given all the other crappy value, but I mean, you can certainly make a very strong case to put Jerome in a lot of your lineups here.
Yeah.
I like the Keon call. I don't love that Cam Johnson is there. That's going to cut into his usage a little bit, but Keon's fine. You just never know when the Nets are going to give a shit. You never know when they're going to be like, yeah, we're just going to let Keon go do his thing. Oh, no, we're going to only play him 20 minutes today. Like, you just don't know.
He's had a pretty stable role for a while, so I feel like he's okay. Like he's been
you're right.
30 plus for quite a while, so 5K
lately for sure. And he's been just flat out solid lately. So obviously D'Lo's there too. He could cut into him, but I agree. Keon does look like a solid play at 5K. Love the Carrington call, especially since for the most part I am playing into a blowout here. I think when it's pushing 20-point spread, we can we can just kind of start assuming it's probably not going to go great for the losing team.
No.
Carrington's going to get minutes. He's 3.3K. And like you said, probably bulletproof. One other guy I'll mention is going to be Marcus Sasser, just because he's 3K flat. And if Cade's out, he's going to look really good. Not sure exactly who would start. My guess is he would be a strong candidate to do so. Already looking at about 15 minutes off the bench. Wouldn't play him right now, but if Cade's out, he would look really good, I think.
Yeah, he's pretty good per minute too, so I'd feel pretty confident in him. I think if that opens up, I would certainly take Sasser over Bub Carrington if I'm only picking one of them.
Oh, yeah. One of the guys I mentioned is Jamal Sheed, too. He's going to get minutes anyways because Toronto got rid of a bunch of guys. He started
the other night with
Davion
on the bench, and now Davion's gone. So
right.
He should start again, I would think.
Yeah, so at 3.5K, like if you're going to take chances on these value guys, I don't think it matters that much whether they're starting or not. I think it just matters like value. Like he's only 3.5. So if he doesn't go out there and play the entire game, doesn't really need to. He just needs to be somewhat effective when he is out there. All right, moving over to shooting guard. We have Donovan Mitchell up top. Not really a great position. In fact, one might go as far as to call it assy. It is not great. Donovan Mitchell obviously is a great play against the Wizards in theory. If the game stays close, if he gets full minutes, he could totally smash. No doubt about it. De'Aaron Fox, not that far away from him, only $100 cheaper, slightly lower on the projection, has a great spot against the Hornets. So, like, if you want to pay up a shooting guard, those guys are fine. Like, there's nothing wrong with them. Dyson Daniels, by the way, I didn't say it, but I'm with you on Dyson Daniels. Pretty good pivot, by the way, off of Poole, who's carrying way more ownership, double the ownership right now. But it gets pretty gross after that. I think I'm just kind of, for the most part, hunting for value at shooting guard.
Yeah, Carrington, Keon, Dyson. We talked about Fox as shooting guard now. He started next to Chris Paul in the first game.
Your boy,
which I thought was
Dick.
Interesting. Yeah, I don't know. I wish he had shooting guard small forward. I think Jacoby is okay again at 4K, starting for Toronto. Same thing as Dick, essentially. But my favorite player here is Koulibaly again at 5'5", guard forward. He gets a usage boost without Kuzma, potentially without Brogdon. Just a pretty strong play.
He's been smashing.
Roberts' ceiling. The matchup's brutal, but he's so cheap that I'm still willing to buy low on him.
Interesting. Yeah, he's been really, really crushing it lately. So I don't hate it. I just don't feel great about Wizards starters in general. Obviously, Malik Beasley would get a huge bump if Cade ended up being out. Don't really think.
Small forward is the guard. That should be. V. Krejci is another one. Like Atlanta was without a couple of wings. Cheap, he's okay. The game total is really good, so cheap exposure to Atlanta, I don't mind that.
Yeah, shooting guard really sucks, man. Okay, dokie. All right, moving on to small forward.
Small forward is worse.
It is impossibly worse. So. Scotty Barnes leads the way. I do think Scotty Barnes is an interesting tournament play. He projects terribly, and OKC is like the worst matchup you can ask for. But if the Raptors are going to keep it close, they're extremely undermanned. There's Quickly, who is limited. Barrett and Pirtle are out. They traded a bunch of dudes. So, like, if they're going to keep it close, and even if they don't, 3/4 of Barnes doing all the heavy lifting actually could be great. Like, I think he's a really interesting tournament play. Nobody's going to play him, and he doesn't project very well, and he's 9.1K. But, I mean, I will get a dash of Scotty Barnes for sure. Jalen is fine, but not as appealing with Chet now back, even though he's limited. OKC just at full strength, so all those guys get bumped down a little bit. I think he's okay. I'd play him over Paul George with Philly also healthy. And by the way, it's a really dog shit position. So if you want to just pay up for a safe-ish guy, I think that's fine. But yeah, so what are you thinking about Barnes, Jalen, PG-13, and what values do you like here?
Yeah, I could see flipping the build and paying up for one of them. I just don't really like any of them. Like Paul George with Embiid in has been pretty pedestrian in the rare occurrences when they've all played together. So I'm not really into that. Barnes, I don't know. Like, I think the Raptors' value is a lot better than him, especially since he would be one of the first to hit the bench in theory if the game blows out, which it probably will. I guess the one I'd like most would be J-Dub, but again, like OKC is probably going to nuke the Raptors, so not psyched about that. At least to be on the winning side in that situation, but 8K with Chet back, full strength essentially, except for Kason Wallace. I'm not super excited about it. I just think I'd rather pay down. I think Bilal Koulibaly is fine again. I think you can get into this wizard stuff with Keyshawn George, our old favorite Keyshawn George at 3,800 is fine. Not a priority, especially if he's chalky, which it looks like he will be. Asar Thompson, I like quite a bit at 4-5. Always has some decent upside, even though the minutes have been pretty limited. If you want to fully punt it, I guess O'Shea Abaji is okay. 3-3 off the bench, but I don't know. It's really, really bad out there. I'm most likely playing Koulibaly, Abaji, or maybe some Asar Thompson. And I think you can make a case for Strus or Jalen Tyson just because the Cavs are a little bit thinner than usual and they're playing the Wizards.
I damn sure feel better about Agbaji than freaking Keyshawn George. He projects better and he's cheaper. Why am I playing Keyshawn George? I'm just going to play Agbaji.
Yeah, especially if the field is more on Keyshawn. Just
which
save the money on Agbaji.
Which they're not. Agbaji is really chalky, so I guess you could consider that. I mean, like Jacoby Walter, like you said, he's a little bit more expensive, but he's going to get probably just as much run as Agbaji, and he's like going to be like half his owned. So that's certainly something to think about. It's just like how many guys are almost bare minimum price and projecting for 30 minutes. You know, ownership be damned. I think Agbaji is a good play, but certainly if a guy who's not like a great DFS player in the first place is going to be mega chalk, you can definitely entertain fading. So if you're doing a lot of lineups, or if you're doing like single entry in particular, I wouldn't play Scotty Barnes. Like I wouldn't be like mega heavy on Scotty Barnes, and I wouldn't put Scotty Barnes in a single entry necessarily. But I do think he's an interesting tournament play because, like I said, these games do not always go the way we think they're going to go. All right, power forward, this is a better position. We have Giannis leading the way. Well, let's see if he gets ruled out after lock, right? So he comes in with a nice 58-point fantasy projection, which is, I think, the best of the slate. Yeah, so rightfully so. 11.8K price. You know, he's not cheap, but he's facing the Hawks. Good matchup. He looks great as long as it's in. Don't mind getting to him whatsoever. He could easily be argued as the top stud of the entire slate. The only question is the only issue is he is questionable, and that random scratch the other day, that didn't feel good. So you're not gonna be comfortable playing Giannis until you know that gets out of your mind. Miles Bridges looks really good here at 9K. Don't really love the price, but the projection looks amazing. Especially if you're playing Spurs here. I think a run back of Miles Bridges with max minutes, he's pretty interesting. I mean, it's tough because like on one hand, I would like him a lot more if LaMelo didn't play, because then his usage would be massive, but then the game would be much more likely to blow out, right? So I think even with LaMelo, he looks really good because there's no Brandon Miller and they're without other guys. Like they traded Mark Williams. Yeah, exactly. So Miles looks great, projects like a god, and he's not even that owned. So I like him a lot. And then you have Evan Mobley, who looks really good against the Wizards, but the game probably will blow out. So yeah, why don't you touch there? Are you like going heavy on Giannis, and how do you feel about Miles?
Yeah, there's so much value that it's really hard. Like you have to pay up for someone, and I feel like Giannis is the easiest way to do it. I understand he's questionable, but if he plays, I assume he'll be full. They're playing Atlanta. They have a super high total. The game itself has a high total and a pretty tight spread. So love Giannis if he's in. Pretty easily the best play on the slate, in my opinion. Not really into Mobley. Like I said, I'm not really into these expensive, like the core four for Cleveland. Just they've monitored the minutes. The game's probably going to blow out. So Mobley can smash in 3 quarters, but I don't really want to pay 8-4 for that risk. So Miles Bridges, I do think is a much better play at 9K, and I don't think he's going to be very popular. So I love him on this slate. The Williams absence is pretty big. Like LaMelo, if he's out, obviously they're less likely to keep the game close. But if he's in, I think it's fine either way. Like I'm very into Bridges. He projects well with LaMelo currently projected in. So those are really the only 2 expensive ones. Like we talked about Jada, but not really into that.
I don't mind Bam. I don't mind Bam. Bam's okay.
Bam's okay. I think I like Ware a little bit more.
Oh yeah, buddy.
Price point, but we'll get to that.
Oh yeah, I agree. But yeah, Bam's okay if you want to get there. I think we're aligned here. Bridges just is going to be worth the extra 800 or whatever it ends up being from which guy you're going up from. He just projects way better. And then of course Giannis. Now, if Giannis does not play, and maybe even if he does, Bobby Portis at 5.5. He looks really good. Obviously, he is a lock. If Giannis is out, got to keep an eye on the status of Kyle Kuzma, because if he's going to debut, then Bobby loses value for sure. But if Kuz is not in, I think Bobby is still interesting at 5.5, no matter what happens with Giannis. What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, he's way too cheap. frustratingly nuked in the last game. He would have been 80% owned had we
Oh,
gotten
for
the Giannis
sure.
news in time, but
That was
we didn't.
bullshit.
So people probably won money since they had time machines and knew that was going to happen. But 5-5
Yeah.
high total. I'm very into it if one of Kuzma or Giannis is out. If both those guys are in, he's quite a bit riskier, but he's still cheap enough to where he's playable. We talked about Abaji. We talked about Keyshawn George. You can also play here. I think in the same vein as like Kuzma, I think you can give a shot to Chris Middleton if he plays at 5,300 for the Wizards, but no idea if he actually will. And then my favorite like overall value, I guess, besides Abaji would be Tijan Salon, who has to have a role for Charlotte now. They traded away Mark Williams. They've made quite a few trades. Cody Martin, Misic is gone as well. Played off the bench in the last game. He's 3K flat. He's okay per minute. Not a comfortable value, but there's not a lot of comfortable value on the slate. So I'd much rather take a shot on an unknown Salon than like a mega chalk Keyshawn George.
Yeah, I'm just going to go out on a limb and say I'm just not going to play Keyshawn George. Certainly not in a friggin' ownership. And honestly, the more I look at it, I kind of want to get away from a chalky Agbaji too. By the way, there's guys on his own team that we could consider. There's Chris Boucher and there's Jonathan Mogbo, 3.1, 3.4K. Like one of those guys has to start, first of all. And they're both probably going to get at least 20 to 25 minutes here. You could go either way as far as like the blowout, like if Boucher doesn't start, which he very well may not, he might be a better play, to be honest. Like if the game blows out, he might get a ton of time off the bench, especially in the fourth quarter. So I think they both look pretty good. Boucher is a really good per minute guy. Right now, Mogbo like looks a little bit better because he probably is going to start. But I think my preference is Boucher, and he's not carrying any ownership right now, which is super, super appealing.
Yeah, I'm very skeptical of the Toronto thing. Like I know they don't have Pirtle and they traded Olynyk, but they do have Boucher and Mobo and Orlando Robinson. Like all those guys can split the center minutes. So it's not necessarily a situation where one of these guys is going to come out and play 30, but
no,
they're all so cheap that you can certainly take shots on them.
Boucher is also not a true center, so you could play that.
I can't imagine he would start at center because he's like 6'10" and 100 pounds.
Yeah, so you could play that more into Robinson or Mogbo if you want to. Just kind of assume that those two would probably be splitting the center minutes more than anything. Or they could go small. That's possible too. Anyways, I like Boucher just because he's a good per minute guy, and he could get extended run just in general. All right, over to center we go. Giannis leads the way there. Wemby looks like a really good leverage on Giannis if Giannis is going to pick up a lot of steam here so far. Giannis does look like the chalky stud, at least when it comes to the bigs. I mean, you're saving $800. He's facing the Hornets. I'm pretty sure he smashed them earlier this year. Let me check that real quick. I'm looking at Giannis, my bad. Let's see, what did he do there? Nope, he didn't play them. My bad. I was thinking of Giannis. He did smash them. But anyways, Wemby looks great here. He's projecting a little bit lower than Giannis, but he's cheaper, and he's going to be about half the ownership, maybe more so. Embiid at 10K, you're saving even more money. He projects well. He's facing the Pistons. That's a matchup he can wreck for sure. So, I mean, it's kind of tough to fade all these guys on this slate, especially when you start looking at, Cade's questionable. LaMelo might be limited. SGA with the blowout. Like, who are you going to get, right? So I think you probably have to get one of these centers. At this point, I'm starting to prefer Giannis because we can use him at power forward and then take advantage of some of the center value that's opening up. But lower owned Wemby and Embiid look pretty damn appealing.
Yeah, I think you can get into all of them. Like Giannis is the best just because of the eligibility. But if he's out, we're going to see a pretty big spike on obviously Portis, but then the expensive ones by default, just because you got to pay for someone. So Embiid and especially Wemby, I could see Wemby getting a ton of traction against a Charlotte team, maybe starting Taj Gibson at center or Musa Diabate. Like it is grim for them. Mark Williams was not even good defensively, but at least he was a big body.
Yeah.
So Wemby's certainly in a smash spot. He doesn't really use his size to his advantage offensively, but it's very hard to imagine the Hornets offering much resistance. So great play either way. No qualms with Embiid. He played 36 minutes in his first game back after they said he would be limited to 30. So that was fun. Posted a triple-double. Detroit, not as amazing a matchup as they were last year. They've been quite a bit better, but 10K Embiid feels a bit cheap on DraftKings, so no qualms with that whatsoever.
Yeah, there's also good mid-range options here. Nobody projects like gods, but Okongwu, 6.3K, he projects pretty good. I don't mind him at all. Khalil Ware, we're both in on him. Projection's not amazing, but up until last game, his role has been awesome. He's been getting all the minutes he could handle. He'd been smashing. He certainly has a good matchup against the Nets. I think he did have like 3 fouls last game. It could have been just a foul thing where he
He
lost
also
minutes.
just got he took 3 shots, I think. He just didn't get
Yeah.
any usage. He was
He had
not
13
in the
rebounds. He had
game.
13 rebounds in 19 minutes. So as long as he's not so passive and doesn't lose his minutes, I think he looks like an awesome play that's going to go completely unowned. Jared Allen, in theory, at 6.4 is a smash play. The only problem is blowout risk. And then you have the guy you mentioned before, Diabate for the Hornets. I assume he starts. I mean, like,
Oh, no, they've been starting Taj over him.
Yeah.
So, I have
So
no
Taj
idea.
will probably start, which honestly makes Diabate look better. 4.3K, doesn't have to face Wemby directly the whole game. So he looks like a pretty good value here. And then we have Rashawn Holmes and the Wizards situation. Rashawn does look good. He's a good per minute player, 3.5K. The only problem is major blowout risk, and the Cavs are pretty good defensively inside. So what are your thoughts on Diabate and Rashawn specifically? And if you don't like them, where are you pivoting?
Yeah, I like them a good amount. I'm a little concerned about Holmes just on a Q tag, illness tag, never fun. I don't know what to make of that. It's very hard to predict how a guy is going to fare if he plays through an illness. So I'm getting him a little bit. I'm getting Diabate a very little bit. But right now I'm kind of getting Tristan Vukcevic more than both of them. 3K flat. The Wizards' backup center probably would start if Holmes cannot play. Obviously, they traded Jonas Valanciunas. They don't have Alex Sarr anymore for tonight, so very thin in the front court. The matchup against Cleveland, like you said, is brutal, but Vucevic has been pretty good per minute in limited time over the last couple of years. So even if Holmes is in, I'm going to get more Vucevic off the bench, I think. Just the discount's useful. Probably not going to be as high owned as Holmes would be if he starts. Would not play those two together, even though they're both very cheap. Just a lot of opportunity cost at center. So not my favorite thing to do, but Vooch right now looks like the preferred punt for me.
I agree. You know, I thought going in it was going to be Rashawn Holmes, but I don't like that he's not 100% healthy. And obviously he's starting and facing the worst part of the matchup, and there's the blowout. So I think Tristan, weirdly enough, is more trustworthy in this
And
spot.
Vooch, they have no reason to play Holmes in a blowout. He's an old man, veteran type. Vucevic has not really gotten a lot of time. So if the game blows out, which it looks like it will, he should get ample garbage time, I would think.
Yeah, absolutely. So what was the game recently where we played a guy who had a questionable illness tag and they were so bad? Do you remember? And I think it
I feel
happened like twice.
RJ Barrett, there have been a lot of them.
RJ Barrett was one of them for sure. I feel it's happened multiple times. And I think like the next time we were talking about this, and I was like, I'm not playing that guy because he's sick.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, if Rashawn is sick in a blowout game against the Cavs, I'm out, man. I think in a vacuum he's a good play, but I think it's a sharp move to Tristan or somebody else here.
He has a narrow path.
Right.
Even if he suddenly feels better and the Wizards somehow keep it close, you're probably still only getting 24 to 26 minutes for him, which is more than enough. He's 3-5. He can certainly smash that, but it's pretty unlikely the game with the 18-point spread stays that close. And like we said, he's the old man. So I just think Vucevic is a better use of the punt position at center.
Plus, he's projecting for 20% ownership. So you're playing into ownership on a guy where there's a lot of red flags. So it's obviously you don't want to fade good chalk. Like you don't want to fade a guy just to fade a guy. At least I don't want to do that. But if you have alternatives who are also cheap and set up kind of in a similar fashion, but they don't have all those red flags, that's when you start considering going away from what the field is doing, right? So at this point, Diabate, $900 more, and he is carrying more ownership. I feel like he's a better play than Holmes right now. But if I'm sticking directly in that range, I think Tristan's the better play than Holmes. And right now, I agree that's probably where I'm headed. Don't want to ignore the Toronto guys either, like we said, but that just seems like a better play. All right, so that does it for the player or position by position breakdown. Hopefully that helped you out a little bit. Before we wrap it up, let's end with our flag plant of the slate and our overall strategy.
Yeah, it's certainly a stars and scrubs slate. The cheap value is so prevalent that it's and there's really nothing in the mid range that you're like dying to play anyway. And we have Giannis, we have Wemby, we have Embiid and Cade, Trae Young at the high end. So a lot of stuff to pay up for. Certainly stars and scrubs is the way to go. I think my flag plant would be Miles Bridges. He's certainly expensive, but I think that'll keep the ownership down. The minutes have been through the roof for the most part. That game does have a decently sized spread, like 11 points against Charlotte, which is not ideal, but the usage is through the roof. I think the ownership's going to be right, so I would be well over the field on him.
Yeah, I love Miles Bridges. I think I agree on the stars and scrubs thing. I think first be very careful as to which scrubs you actually commit to and what your exposure is on them, because none of them really look really great. And also you don't have to go all the way down. I think starting off with Ty Jerome or guys kind of just in the 5 to 4K range, you don't have to go supreme stars and scrubs necessarily and try to get 3 studs every time. But more so than the value on the slate, it's what you said. In addition to that, is the mid-range isn't even that good. This is not a slate where I'm I'm going to go live in the mid-range. No, there's nothing to do in the mid-range. There's nothing that looks good. So could you maybe get away with stacking up Donovan Mitchell and Jalen Williams and Evan Mobley? Sure, you could, but the way the slate is mapping out, it doesn't look like that's very logical. That doesn't look like a good way to approach a slate. One thing I will say though, and at a very smaller level, is if you're going to do any stacking or game stacking or put in a lot of lineups, I would maybe set some rules where you are stacking some of these blowout games, like the OKC and Toronto game and the Wizards and the Cavs game. If I am building out lineups or doing a small amount of lineups, I don't want to do this. But if I'm doing a lot of lineups, I do want to stack these games a little bit, because if they stay close, there's a lot of great plays in those games, right? Obviously you have SGA and the Cavs I mentioned, and then you're really liking Jordan Poole. If that game does stay close, Jordan Poole is going to go off, right? So just something to consider for sure. As far as flag plant, I'll say Trae Young again, because the ownership's absurd. I love him tonight. And then if Wemby is going to be lower owned than Cade and Giannis and similarly owned compared to Embiid and SGA, I think Wemby looks awesome tonight. One more thing is people love what they saw from Fox in his debut. I think they also might get a little bit scared that he had so much usage and was kind of taking away from Wemby. That's not what's going to happen every game. Wemby is still Wemby, right? So
he's probably going to just take the usage from Vassell. I think Wemby's usage is always going to be the same. Those two are going to be the guys, and then the other guys,
right? Barnes
and Paul and Vassell and Keldon are going to be the ones who lose out.
Yeah, I think the big message there is let's not overreact to one game. Let's not be prisoners to recency bias too much. Oh, Fox took all the usage, we can't play Wemby now. No, you definitely can, and you should if nobody's going to be on him. All right, that does it for us. Hopefully this helps you out. If it did, please give a like to this video. Let's get as many likes as possible, because that really helps us out, gets us a little bit more exposure. And if you're not subscribed to the channel, please do that. Helps us out a lot as well. And if you want extra advice, because sometimes these videos, as much insight as we give, they get outdated because injury news pops. If Giannis is out, we kind of went down over that. But if something else happens that is just not on our radar, go join our Discord. It's free to come chat, get advice, and our DraftKings core plays are currently free as well. And if you play on FanDuel, and if you want DraftKings night plays, and you want to play MMA DFS, you can hit up our Patreon, because we offer that too. All right, thanks for watching, and good luck.